What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. As promised, today we are working on the Legacy GT, which is behind me up on the lift, and we're gonna be getting the suspension completely torn off this car and ready for all of our new parts to go on. Now, if you haven't seen all the new parts we're throwing on this car, I will link that video up in the corner. One of these sides up here, I don't know which side it's on, but let me show you where we left off. So we've got the car up on the lift, wheels are off. You guys will see the whole Brembo brake restoration in a future video, but today we're gonna get the mufflers off so we can take the rear sway bar off, removing these rear lower arms that we're gonna be replacing, removing the strut and spring combo. So just getting a lot of stuff stripped off back here. Up front, we have quite a bit to do as well. We're gonna get this sway bar off, which means taking this whole bracket off here. These control arms are getting replaced with Spec B control arms. We gotta take those off. Like I said, front sway bar has to go. Obviously, again, strut and spring combo has to go. So we got a lot of stuff to get stripped off this car so that it's ready for all the new parts to go on. And then if you watched the last video, I talked about my plans of how to fix this. Now, I know there were some comments on the last video saying not to Raptor line the wheel wells because that stuff has a tendency to crack and then create spots for salt and grime to get into. I have heard this, but I also have a couple reputable shops that have used Raptor liner on a lot of different builds with great success. On the 240, I do have plans to use a rubberized undercoating like would come from the factory. But part of the reason that I wanted to try the Raptor liner on this was because it's tintable. So we've got the Raptor liner over here and we got paint matched tint to add to this so that when we redo it, it should look exactly like this texturized blue stuff here. So as part of that, we obviously have to take off the whole fender liner. So I want to get everything out of the way. And in the next video, we'll be doing the whole Raptor lining process. So there's not much left, but just to do it. So I'm gonna start in the rear of the car, get all these parts torn off, and we'll work our way forward. Let's get it. Well, boys, I just made the unfortunate realization that in order to take out the rear shock assembly, I have to take out some interior pieces, which is never fun. So I'm gonna lower the car down, unbolt it from the top, and then unbolt it from the bottom and pull that guy out. Okay, that took a while, but I finally got the interior all stripped out, and I did decide to take off the whole side panels here just so I have full access to the top of the coilover when it goes in so that we can make adjustments as we drive the car and get it dialed into exactly what we want. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop out the Coney strut and Swift spring combo that's in the car currently, get those dropped out, and then I think we can move on to the front. So unfortunately, these, I think they're called eccentric washers, got a little bit damaged when we were just taking those rear arms off. And this nut got a little bit rounded, so I'm gonna need to order those. I'm making a list of things that I need to get, and stuff like this happens during the project, so not a big deal. this kind of stuff happens. So we've got everything stripped off the rear that we're gonna be replacing. I need to double check what bushings I got. I believe I got bushings for this upper arm that is staying, but that means that'll have to come out when we do all the new Whiteline stuff. And then it may be easier if we just have the knuckle off in the first place, because you know there's bushings in here that need to get replaced as well. So the back's done for now. Let's move on to the front. Okay, so on the front, I've looked at it for a little bit and kind of formulated a plan that I think makes the most sense to take it apart. We're gonna remove this brace here, pull out the sway bar, get the end link completely disconnected from the lower control arm here, because we are replacing those on both sides. And then once we get the bracket and sway bar off, I'm gonna take the steering rack and get that out, because that will allow us to disconnect the tie rods, and then we can fully remove everything over here, because we're gonna need to get this whole strut assembly out, the lower control arm, and with the tie rod disconnected, once we take these two things off, we can remove this hub completely and just pull everything out, so this is wide open when we're working on doing the Raptor liner. This nut has decided it wants to play hard to get and rounded itself off, and it doesn't seem to want to budge, so we are no longer asking. Well, that little nut made it much harder than it needed to be, but we got it off. Just had to kind of cut through one side to the point where I could break it loose. With the sway bar and brace all out, we're gonna start attacking the power steering rack, get these lines disconnected up here, and then pull the rack itself out. Actually, we gotta disconnect it from the hub over here first. So we will disconnect the lines, detach it from the hub, and disconnect it here last. After a long battle, the tie rod is out of the knuckle. Unfortunately, there was much more power steering fluid in the system than I thought, and now it looks like there was a murder in here. So I'm gonna clean this up, because I don't want that to stay on the floor any more than it already has. And then we'll pull the steering rack out. Love that. Pop the axle out and just chaos ensued. But I think based on looking at that fluid, it is definitely a good thing that that is pouring out, because we're gonna replace all of that. This probably has 40,000 miles on it. So it's about time for a change. It's a good thing that it inadvertently spilled. So I decided just to drain all of the trans fluid out of the car. The last little bit's draining right now. I'm gonna let that finish, but I do wanna bring the car down, because I need to look at where the power steering lines are connected up in the engine bay and start looking at our struts unbolted from the top. So I'm gonna get the 3 bolts out on each side, and then we can look at the power steering rack, since that's a little bit more complicated than I thought. Okay, after like 10 hours, the car is torn down. It's ready to go. So in the next video, we're gonna be doing the Raptor liner and the wheel wells, getting that all cleaned up, prepped, applying that new Raptor liner, letting it dry, and we're gonna be finally getting this car back together. If you're loving the Legacy GT content and wanna see more of this series, I've included a couple videos here on the screen to show you what we're planning on doing with the car, as well as one of my older favorite videos with the Legacy.